Yeah, it's Monday and you find me in my usual site, although it rhymes with sight, the state of the weather. I didn't come to Spain for grey skies. This is the front page, the headline of the day. Not Hey Jude, Ray Jude, King Jude. And boy, was he good. Not bad, eh? Positive reaction, say Sport, because Lamine scored and looked closer to fitness. We'll come back to that in a minute. And a launching pad towards Anfield is how Diario As call a performance by Real Madrid. And I think that's where we start, because the league leaders, and dare we say it, already champions-elect, played so very well, it would be simple to start with Los Blancos. But if we begin at Santiago Bernabeu, then what happened post-match on Saturday was sufficiently dramatic to drag our attention towards Valencia temporarily. Radio journalist Hector Gomez went on the attack. There's no other description for it. He went on the attack like I've only heard in this country journalists do once before, so personally, so viciously, and that was when Gary Neville's hapless Valencia were thrashed by 7 goals in a 2016 Copa del Rey semi-final at Camp Nou. On that occasion, on that night, the attacks were very personal, not to say vicious, and they were specifically aimed at getting the ex-Manchester United defender out. Out as soon as possible, and it worked. I don't know if that's exactly what Hector Gomez was aiming at, but in this instance, the terminology was just as vitriolic, personal and angry. And the interminable question via which the Valencia coach Carlos Corberán had his ears pinned back included the word shameful at least 3 times. Gomez asked Corberán whether he was personally ashamed at the lack of character, lack of competitive aggression, and the embarrassing image which his Valencia team was consistently showing in big games. I guess this has all been coming, given that in Corberán's 3 matches against FC Barcelona, they've been utterly pathetic. Sorry, Carlos, but that's the way to describe it. They've conceded 18 goals across 3 defeats, home and away, in Liga and Copa. But what the question ignored, keep it down please, what the question ignored is that the Spaniard inherited a weak, in fact, a sitting duck lame Valencia last season when they were bottom, and took them pugnaciously to mid-table safety. In fact, it's only 5 months since Corberán's Los Che beat Madrid at the Bernabeu. But the way in which they played during this hammering by Xabi Alonso's team was really too much for the travelling journalists, too much for their stung pride. They were angry and they were humiliated. They believed that the team had besmirched the club's image, and so they went for Corberán. It's an unedifying sight, whatever you feel about the football. Corberán admittedly agreed that his team had lacked competitive backbone. Nobody on the night considered the fact that the problem is with the ownership, the board, how they buy, how they sell, the restrictions they put on the coach, and generally how the club is run. Clear evidence for that is the fact that Valencia have flirted with relegation on a number of occasions since, let's talk about it, sacking the coach, Marcelino, who took them to a winning Copa final, a top 4 position, and therefore Champions League football. The fucking imbeciles. 9 coaches have taken charge in the 6 years since that. And okay, the Mestalla side were paper thin. Again, sorry, producer Jack. But it also needs to be taken into the equation, although it probably won't be by majority shareholder Peter Lim if he's already decided to sack Corberán during the coming international break, that Madrid played magnificently. This is the best side in Spain right now that we're talking about. They've been robust, consistent, aggressive, well coached, defensively much more sound, But it's not the case that Alonso's side has played brilliant football week in, week out. Far from it, in fact. Nor, I would say, have they been sufficiently efficient in front of goal. Oodles of chances, regularly low scores. Both of those things changed pretty dramatically against Valencia. Suffice to say, ahead of a testing trip to Anfield on Tuesday night, Jude Bellingham was again absolutely superb. He's transformative in this team, when he's at his best at least. Dominant, clever, quick passing, piercing passing. And again, we talk about this too rarely. He's an absolute joy to watch. Los Blancos could even afford the farcical comedy of Kylian Mbappe, having scored twice, giving away a penalty to his chum Vinicius, and the Brazilian missing pretty woefully. What we were treated to was another absolute masterclass in finishing from this imperious Frenchman. An absolute killer goal was added from Bellingham, and then one of the best of the European season from Carreras, who started so strongly for Madrid, then looked defensively a little bit confused, and is on the rise again. Please, on no account, miss Liverpool versus Real Madrid in the Champions League on Tuesday night. Should be an absolute corker. Revista will be live on the final whistle for socios only. And on that subject, this every week, I'm thrilled to say, is what we share with everybody. Anybody who's got a passing interest in brilliantly expressed emotions, crystal clear, old-fashioned grammar, a stupid sense of humour, and Spanish football. What we've got coming up are regularly huge Champions League matches, the return of the Copa del Rey, and I will take you, if you want to invest 30 quid here and now, I will take you all the way through the Nations League, through the World Cup qualification, Champions League, Europa League, Conference League, LaLiga, Copa del Rey, the Finalissima between Spain and Argentina, I hope, probably in Doha in March, all the way through the World Cup, through to after the final in New Jersey for 30 quid. If things are tight, and they can be for everybody, it's £3.99 a month. Sign up now, become a socio. We need you, we need your support. It's that simple. This isn't me saying, give us a quid. We need your support. You'll be having guests regularly, like recently we had Kevin Bridges, Greg McHugh, Michael Laudrup, Gaishka Mendieta, Jamie Easton, Pete Jensen. Join us, support us. P.S. With such street-smart substitutions by Alonso on Saturday, key players Arda and Tchouaméni were rested at half-time when Madrid went 3-0 up. But he took Mbappe off for a deserved huge ovation from the Bernabeu crowd, and having started Vinicius in the lineup to prove that there was no vendetta following the Brazilian's histrionics last week. Vinicius was subbed off in minute 79, and this time the walking soap opera wandered off with elegant good grace, blowing kisses at everybody, calling everybody darling, thank you darling, you're so wonderful, I love you, hugging the very life out of Rodrigo and Endrick, who's overweight, and then exchanging a courteous low five with Alonso. Last week it was like watching a Warner Brothers Tasmanian devil on acid cartoon. This week it was like watching the Waltons. Do you remember them? Good night, John Boy. All wholesome and loving and kind, and we all adore each other. Anyway, I will tell you where else there was absolutely great La Liga entertainment, and that's fucking everywhere. The papers this morning, if you go inside, are full of extravagant ideas that Villarreal are a better title contender to Real Madrid than Barcelona. Maybe's no, to quote the great Kenny Dalglish, part of which belongs to the way in which Villarreal clinically and ruthlessly dismissed Rayo Vallecano. It was huge entertainment. I should know, because I was co-commentating. There were some good goals. There was the worst sitter of this or many seasons by Nicola Pepe, who, the ball was almost over the line by the time he touched it. He still put it over the bar. But for the first time this season, with a Conference League match coming up against Poznan in Poland, then hosting Real Madrid next weekend, Rayo Vallecano were sluggish, sloppy, error-strewn, and so far from representing their no-one-shall-pass mentality, that they were pretty unrecognisable. Rayo keeper Augusto Batalla was only 40 minutes away from beating the club's all-time record for not conceding. Remember, they shipped 4 on Saturday, not conceding in La Primera, that is, until Moreno scored. And Batalla's verdict was, our marking was poor, we need to be self-critical, but it's just a bad day at the office. Let's not go crazy. All right, fair enough. Now, this is a place for blunt speaking by me and by you, and therefore it's not sacrilegious to argue to you that, partly because most of you already know this, that the big Basque derby is not a guarantee of velvet smooth, 5-star cordon bleu football. In fact, there's been quite a lot of blood and thunder, or maybe that should be thud and blunder, in recent seasons. This episode? Well, this episode left you wanting more. This was a pepper pot of attitude, terrific goals, fantastic stories, and some bad news. In fact, let's call this Basque Derby at Anoeta the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good was the way that Real Sociedad finally started playing with courage, conviction, personality, and winning, that little thing. I mentioned here that it's only a couple of weeks ago at home to Rayo when Oyarzabal, as captain and representative at the end of the match, was looking down the barrel of the camera like a man suffering from spiritual concussion. Not broken, but breaking. Something has to change, he said after that 1-0 home defeat, where he gave that 1,000-yard stare as if there were no answers. But it has changed. And better still, the captain, Oyarzabal, having scored twice last week for a win, added 2 big goal assists here. All hail Bigfoot Oyarzabal. La Real were the better side against Athletic. They got some injured players back, a couple of their star players. Good goal, Gonzalo Guedes. Began to deliver, and everyone began to pull their weight. And the odd goal in 5, the 5th, went to a youngster in his debut season. Also, therefore, in his first time against Athletic, John Gorachategui. He doesn't have a reputation for scoring goals. More about that in a minute. But he nicked that 5th of 5 to give the Churiordin a victory, which by unanimous declaration, they did deserve. In fact, the 21-year-old admitted afterwards, all week in training, the guys have been taking the piss out of me and stating that I'm the least likely in the squad to score a goal. So now, dressing room, I've been taking the piss out of them because although my first shot from an Oyarzabal assist was really bad, I think they all thought I was going to put the rebound over the bar and into the stand. But I burst the net, and it's an absolute fairy tale to score the winner in my first Basque derby. The bad and the ugly. Athletic have got Champions League football again this week away at Newcastle. And frankly, Los Leones aren't coping. Shut the fuck up. Los Leones aren't coping. They've had 1 win in 8 in LaLiga matches now, and 2 defeats out of 3 in the Champions League. Uri is on a doping ban until February. Iñaki Williams is out with an adductor injury until probably January, and he never gets injured. But most crucially, neither Nico Williams, who may now need groin surgery, we don't know for sure, but he may, or Oyen Sunset are showing any trace of form or sharpness or confidence. As a team, Athletic looks short of goal creation, and their self-belief is beginning to creak badly, and that's threatening. Quite how Ernesto Valverde steadies this particular ship, given how bumpy the sea is, I don't quite know. Valverde's view in San Sebastian was, the sun will rise in east tomorrow, just like it always does. I don't think we were dominated by our rival, and the next game will roll along on Wednesday. And in football, there's nothing you can't cure with hard work. Ernesto, I salute your indefatigability, but fuck me, you're in trouble. In amongst the best of the rest comes a little perler of a game in Valencia where Levante suffered a slap in the face, which will sting and leave a palm print on their cheek for a very long time to come. The visitors were Celta. The Galicians led, but before they could get anywhere near their fourth straight victory in 9 days, having not won all season until 9 days ago, the 10 men of Julian Calero rallied, played some stirring stuff, equalised and genuinely threatened to win. I'll paint you a picture. These beleaguered Valencian fans who had begun to think that the world was against them and that they were interlopers, that they really didn't belong in the Primera Division, then did what all football fans all over the world do given any glimpse of optimism, and they began to roar and chant and believe and then count the minutes until their winner came. Guaranteed. The winner did come, but it was for Celta as Aspas, who the fuck else, Mingueza, and then finally Miguel Angel created something which would be boastful to call a half chance, until the Vigo-born 22-year-old smashed it home on the half volley. Cue collapsing substitutes on the Levante bench, tearful fans, and a Calero side which hasn't won at home all season, beginning to genuinely think that they're cursed. It isn't that, but boy, this was sore. It was a cracking match end to end. There was constant attacking intention. And if you don't feel sorry for Levante, yes you, then it's because you're a Valencia fan and it's better to see them suffering than you. You're an international fucking psychopath. Or you're a happy Celta fan, probably by now halfway to Zagreb, where they play Dinamo this week in UEFA competition. Good luck to Giraldez and his merry bunch of sky blue men. When you watch them play, you get entertainment. Betis and Barcelona both scored 3 times at home. The stars being Antony for Los Verde Blancos, as Betis really pushed Mallorca about. And the hero for Barcelona was probably Fermin Lopez with 2 assists, one of them an absolute world-class corker for Marcus Rashford, who now has 6 goals and 7 assists in I don't know how many minutes, but he's getting a goal contribution just about every 110 minutes. His left-footed rocket of a goal is worth seeking out if you haven't seen it. But there are always critics, and some in the Catalan media are singing that old song about all he does is score goals, he doesn't really understand the play. Yeah, good one. The other headline for the champions, I suppose, was that Lamine Yamal opened the scoring with a real beauty of a goal, and it looked, at least gently it looked, as if he's beginning to find stamina and sharpness following his injury and all the fucking shit controversy that unnecessarily surrounds him. It was an especially happy weekend to be a Betis fan, of course, because Sevilla lost again, and Matias Almeida's side, he's their Argentinian coach, had very little to complain about, as Atletico Madrid threatened to run riot and also scored 3 home goals, just like Betis and Barcelona. Atleti are such an enigma, and it's a clash of the nearly men, 3 defeated Champions League finals, against the complete newbies when Cholo Simeone's team travelled to play Belgian champions Union Saint-Gilloise this week. Espanyol, Catalan giants, lost up in Vitoria against Alaves, even though they scored a beautiful diving header, which, note my words, hello Pete Jensen, was set up by Carlos D'Artagnan Romero. Good assist. Remember we mentioned him last week? Keep your eye on him. And I've got Espanyol against Villarreal next week on co-commentary duties, I think with Pete Jensen. Looking forward to the big match, big time. Anyway, see you tomorrow night for the live coverage immediately after Liverpool playing Real Madrid. And then again on Wednesday after Barcelona tried to bring their season back into acceptable levels over in Bruges. In Bruges? Do you remember the film? Brendan Gleeson tells Colin Farrell, "Ray, you're the worst tourist in the world." Farrell replies, "Ken, I grew up in Dublin. I love Dublin. If I grew up on a farm and was retarded, Bruges might impress me. But I didn't, so it doesn't." Let's hope that Mr. Flick and Barcelona don't suffer the same feelings in Bruges on Wednesday. Revista de LaLiga viewers, thank you for being there. Stay tuned.